Warner Brothers Discovery has had a tough time at the box office this last year. I mean, according to this article from the Direct, Warner Brothers suffers record-breaking box office losses from DC movies, and that was as of a couple days ago. And if you actually go to this other article right here from Comic Book Movie, Warner Brothers has now released 7 DC Extended Universe box office flops in a row, which is really saying something. I mean, that's not a record I think any studio wants to have. And this news came after Blue Beetle was another box office flop for the studio. And I think they were kind of hoping that I mean, even if that wasn't going to actually be as good as what they would initially thinking, that it would actually not be as big of a loss to the studio as what it was, because it was noticeably had a low marketing budget for the movie, but even then it still did have somewhat of a marketing budget, just not as much as other things like The Flash. But now we're getting these new rumors coming out about the new Aquaman movie, and that's saying that the studio has basically given up on it. Now, these are all rumors, so you can take it with a grain of salt, but this ultimately stems from the fact that this movie is just a couple months away from being released, and there hasn't been any teaser, no trailer, or anything basically about it. And a lot of people were saying, like, did Warner Brothers just not market this at all? Because that's one of the ways, if you have no faith in your project as a studio, one way to mitigate the losses is literally just to not market it and save a ton of money that way. Because even movies with modest marketing budgets, like we saw with Blue Beetle or with Shazam 2, I mean, they still cost like $60-70 million to market it, and that was a pretty weak one, almost to the point where a lot of people were saying that they weren't even marketing it at all. So with something like Aquaman 2, maybe they're just trying to cut their losses, especially since they've not only invested so much in the principal photography, but they've also, as recently as in July, were still doing extensive reshoots on it, and apparently there's been lots of test screenings that people don't care for it. But the question ultimately is, why are these movies for DC failing? And I think a lot of this has to do with James Gunn being brought on board. And I'm not necessarily blaming him per se. It has to do with the fact the studio brought him on and basically announced they're going to be rebooting the whole DCEU. And that's a problem for these movies that were still set to come out, because a lot of people go to see these superhero movies with the idea that it's going to be part of a shared universe. And when you basically announce, no, we're going to retcon these out of existence, so they're going to be non-canon, audiences are kind of thinking like, well, no point in getting invested and going to see these movies if they're not even going to matter in the long run. And especially when you have something like HBO Max that you can just watch it a couple months later, then audiences are like, well, then I'm not going to pay. I'll just wait a couple months and watch it if I feel like it. And that's really what we're seeing now with a lot of this. And after The Flash bombed, I think the studio might have gotten the idea like, well, that probably bombed because of Ezra Miller and his controversies off screen, but maybe Blue Beetle will still succeed. And then they gave it a modest marketing budget, and it really wasn't as expensive as some of their other superhero movies, so they gave that a shot, and that was another huge bomb for them. So even though Aquaman, the first one, did really well for the studio, I think they're just realizing they just need to cut their losses, or at least try to mitigate their losses as much as possible. They already invested so much money in the production and then the reshoots. I mean, they're just trying to see like, how can we cut corners? And a lot of that has to do with the fact that, like, yeah, just don't market it. It's Aquaman. People are aware of it. I mean, there's probably going to be a trailer coming out sometime if they don't delay it or whatnot. But I think they just kind of want to get this off their hands right now and just kind of drop it off into theaters, see what it does. I mean, try to make back some of their money, but expect it to be another loss for them. And then basically wash their hands of this whole past DCEU and then just kind of get started afresh with James Gunn's universe. But in all honesty, it was a mistake for them to basically announce that they're going to be rebooting the whole thing. I mean, they should have brought they could have brought James Gunn in, announced that he's going to be taking over, but not outright say that they're going to be ditching all these other movies. I mean, just say like, yeah, he's going to be continuing on with it, like kind of like what he did with the Suicide Squad movie. I mean, it was kind of a continuation, even though it was a soft reboot. I mean, basically make that claim and don't say outright that you're not going to be continuing these movies, or don't at least imply that that's what you're going to be doing. But I mean, that's probably too little too late. And I think this is probably the best course of action for the studio right now, is just mitigate their losses with Aquaman and then be done with it. But let me know what you think about all this in the comment section below. I mean, do you think these rumors are true, that they're just cutting it loose entirely? Or is there some other reason? Maybe they're just going to delay the movie and release a trailer then. I mean, Let me know, and if you like this video, make sure you click the like button, share the video, and subscribe to the channel if you want to stay up to date with the latest news. Thank you.